Welcome back to Engaging Game Design with Mr. Tralexium.
Hello, hello. I guess this is my cue to start talking. Hi.
Yep.
Yep. So we're gonna launch the game real quick. It is a game. It's not gonna be a slideshow as I planned initially. So it should be more entertaining to watch. And yeah, it should be good
Just
to go.
let me
right
know
now.
when you want me to start the timer.
Yeah, you can start it now.
Okay. Well, have a good one then.
Oh, thanks. All right. Hopefully nothing goes kaboomy. All right. Looks like we're in. All right. So this is literally a game about game design, specifically engaging game design. And we're gonna start with introduction. All right. So who am I? Most of you know as Alex. Some of my endearing friends call me the Troller, but in the internet I am known as Tralexium. I'm a hobbyist developer who has been in the game dev field for about 4 years, maybe more. I can't really keep up track with time. And I've participated in countless projects. A lot of you might know me making a lot of stuff for Not Another Noodle Contest 2. I want to destroy the Needleverse is another project. And, you can find me on Delftruit. So, not a lot of people know the term engaging. Like, some people might think of it, oh, like, you're making a game that's addictive, right? But that's not really true. Engaging is the good side of addictive. You're not making, like, another Candy Crush clone. So, for today's talk, we're making games. Making games basically engaging, and without any proper knowledge about the design principles that goes into them, it's like making a pizza without a recipe. Like, sure, it might come out of the oven. It's not gonna be burned or anything, but you surely offend some Italians. And I bet some of you will agree. Everyone knows that all the player base is Italians, and you don't want to offend them. So knowing the how when it comes to making games is crucial. Going into game dev blindly can result into dull, repetitive, or even confusing games. So, yeah, basically what the paragraph says. And nothing in this presentation is like absolute. You can take these rules as a grain of salt, and a lot of the times it's up to you, really. Like, use some common sense, see what works, see what doesn't, and if players tell you the game feels good, then you're doing a great job. And for this presentation, we're going to be focusing more on 2D platformers. As everyone knows, this is a community mostly about them, especially Fangamers here. So we're going to streamline this a bit more so it's a lot more digestible. So we're going to game pace. What that's all about. So pacing is crucial. Game pace is usually referring to mixing different gameplay elements, which are often referred as pillars. That's what the game developers usually call them. And that keeps the game fresh. So some examples of them are combat, story and cutscenes, puzzles, minigames, and even item hunting. The list can go on, and it really depends up to the game genre. So mix and matching them, this is the fun part. So you have a set of pillars, right? And you have to strategically place them in order to help the player be engaged. So, for example, you might have an intensive boss fight, and then gameplay should be skippable, specifically cutscenes. I agree with that, Tikimbu. But yeah, for example, if you have a boss fight and the player has been like through a lot of action, you can give him a cutscene or something relaxing to restore some of his stamina, and then introduce something different, maybe like something like a puzzle to stimulate a bit of the brain, or you can have more platforming. It's up to you, really. But as long as you're switching between them often, that's good. And here we have an excellent example of that. As most of you know, Celeste is a 2D platformer about a girl called Mandeline climbing a hill or a mountain. It's more of a mountain, really. And there's a lot of elements in there that most people think it's just a platformer, really, but in reality, you have cutscenes, you have small quirky puzzles, and you have excellent gameplay interwoven into all of that. Yes, controls. So, the feeling of the controls. Having a solid understanding of what makes controls feel good is not something you just know about without playing a lot of games. Most of us can just sense them, you know? Like when you play Mario or Hollow Knight, you can feel that the controls are snappy and you are in control of the character, but not a lot of people know what kind of small tricks that developers use to make them feel that good. So, for example, in modern platformers, protagonists have to be responsive and have fair controls. This gives the player more freedom to experiment with the movement, as well as allow for more creative level design. Some of the good practices are responsive controls. So if you move the stick or press a key on the keyboard, it should feel like you're immediately putting some input, but it shouldn't feel super snappy. Like Fangames have super snappy controls, and for what Fangames are, it works. But most platformers that you'll see, they have some momentum to give a little bit of realism and heft to the character. So when you start pressing a button, it should speed up fairly decently, and then when you let go of the button, it should slow down. And it really depends on the game and how you design it. When you're using those two things, especially momentum. So maybe a game like Ori, it has a little bit more of a floaty control scheme, but that helps it to navigate through the environment a lot, and it still feels responsive. And there's also tricks like coyote time and input buffering, which help a lot. If you don't know about them, I would highly recommend checking Madeline's Twitter. She made a post about it last year, I think, and she covered both of those topics as well as other ones that were also used in Celeste. So communication, that can be summarized into how to play. When designing a game, it's essential to sometimes step back and view it from a new player's perspective. Is the goal clear? Are the controls properly explained without being intrusive? These are problems that many games used to face, but over the recent years, developers have started taking notice and have interwoven a lot of the explanation into the gameplay itself, so making them feel more natural and also eliminating the need to freeze progression. So there's a lot of games back in the days where you used to have a lot of pop-ups that freeze the gameplay, like they explain something real quick and then they just like continue, and that can ruin the pace. So excellent examples of these are Portal and Shovel Knight. Both games feel really well, but what's even more impressive about them is how well that you teach the player with how to play those games. So with Portal, on the left, you can see there's clear dotted lines suggesting the actions that you have to do. So those dotted lines tell you, so if you put something, or if you walk on those buttons, the panels become ticked. So that you can see the tick, and you're like, you're doing something correct. So this kind of slowly lets the player know what they're doing. And Shovel Knight is also really good at that term as well. It doesn't do it the same way that Portal does, but the visual aspects and the how free the gameplay is at the beginning, like there's not a lot of things you can mess up, that allows the player to learn more about the control scheme on his own. And a lot of old retro games do that as well, like Mega Man and Mario. Like, they don't really teach you how to play it, it just naturally comes to you. So less than subtle, teaching the player how to play a game can be done in many ways. You can use short labels in unobtrusive spots to teach you mechanics. So you can just like have a small text box at the bottom or somewhere in the game that tells you, hey, if you press this or this combination, you can do that kind of action. And also you can have other visuals, such as gently flashing an object that usually gives you an indication that there might be something good over there hiding behind a cracked wall, or maybe like a pot that you can break. So it can be like a shine or a sparkle. It doesn't have to be necessarily a flash. And also, I'm not sure how many of you noticed, but a lot of the games have more frantic flashing animations for hazards. So like spikes or plasma, stuff like that. They flash a lot more to grab the player's attention, and that lets them know, or like lets them see in time about the hazard. And those are just some of the possibilities. And those seemingly small decisions can lead to a more intuitive experience for the players. So study other games that you like, see how they do it, and then try implementing some of those for your own game. And also, very important, I cannot explain like how important this is, but a lot of people, especially game developers, they tend to put a lot of the stuff in the beginning, and then just like let it go and then start from normal again, which is not something you want to do. So, for example, Civilization is like one of those kind of games where I'm not sure about the new ones, but the old ones, they used to teach all of the rules, like give you the whole rule book, and then say, okay, well, you've read the rules, now let's start from square one, which is really, at that point, since square one is like using 10% of those rules, the player is most likely gonna be overwhelmed and is gonna forget all the rules that he learned about. So what you want to do is like start simple, like teach, hey, this is what you do to jump, this is what you do to move, and then over time add new things. Alright, game balance. Start simple. This is basically what I said in the last slide. So people have varying interests and experience. Everyone knows that not everyone can beat K3. I know some of you can flex on that, but most people can't, unfortunately. Or fortunately, depends how you view it. And as a game developer, it is crucial to ease the player in without making them feel overwhelmed. So, for those who made a fan game before, how many of you actually showed their fan games to maybe their friends or parents and say, hey, would you mind trying that? Most of the time, I've tried it personally with my classmates, and they said, wow, this is cool looking, but I can't play it. And this sucks. Like, this feeling that most people can't play your games really sucks. And so it is very important to make sure that not everyone knows what a platformer is or how to play it, and grab them by the hand and teach them slowly those kind of elements. And so, like, I also bring a good example where when you're learning how to drive a car, you don't just like learn everything at once. You start with the basics and then you add things one by one until you master everything and you can do everything simultaneously. So a great example is Crash 4. It starts off simple. The platforming is fairly elementary. Just teaches you what you can do, what the environment has to offer, and then over time it intensifies that and adds new elements to keep the game more engaging. And freedom is essential. Allowing the player to freely arrive from point A to B in different ways can often solve the issue of linearity. So, again, bringing back Celeste as an example, there's the cool thing about it is you can complete a segment or a level in different ways. It doesn't force you to do it in a specific path. Like, you can grab onto a wall jump and then dash, or just like dash and jump, something like that, you know? There's many techniques that you can utilize to accomplish the same tasks, and this kind of creativity lends to not only better gameplay, but also more possibilities for speedruns as well. And a great example of that is Point Stack, made by Denferock. Really well executed, and I think the first two worlds perfectly illustrate what I've just said. So if you haven't played this game, I would highly recommend it. So keeping it fresh, basically it's adding new elements, like I said earlier, to slowly build up onto the gameplay and to keep the player entertained. So whenever you feel the player had enough and he mastered those controls, offer something new, maybe a new ability or a new area that you can unlock in the Metroidvania. And Hollow Knight is one of those great examples as well. It's a very well-known Metroidvania that has a lot to offer and does this really well. So, helpful visuals. This can be often referred to as GUI, or graphical user interface. It's literally the stuff that you're looking at right now. This is also can be considered a GUI. So, and that's to let the player know their current status or environment. And they can range from health and mana, minimap, an item bar, or even enemy stats. For example, when you strike a slime with a sword and it shows the health bar underneath. And consistent visual language is another important aspect, making sure the visuals don't clash with each other and also make sense as to what they do. So that refers to good iconography, making sure that the UI meets the modern standards, and that's a whole different topic. So if you're interested into making better UI, there's a lot of resources on the internet about that. And user experience is another subcategory of that, where it commonly refers to the usability and intuitiveness of the UI. And there is no definitive answer for this because it really depends a lot on the genre and the platform. So if you're making an operating system for a phone, there's different principles that make a good UX or user experience. But in our case, for platformers, it's usually nice and sharp elements. They don't cover too much of the screen, and they give you only the essentials. And if you need more information from the game, then you can always access them via shortcuts. Like if you press the tab key, you see the full map, or you can get them from a pause menu. And Dead Cells is another great example of this. You can see there's an item bar in the bottom left and a minimap on the bottom right. But the very cool thing about it is that it doesn't obstruct anything. It's over the floor, which usually isn't something you interact with or go underneath it. So this kind of like clever positioning can help a lot with the user experience. And this is the special thanks segment. I'd like to thank GMTK or Game Maker's Toolkit for providing a lot of this information. For those who don't know, he has a YouTube channel with brilliant videos that cover more about game dev topics or game design topics. So if you're interested about that, I'd highly recommend watching him. He's a great guy, and he also hosts really cool game jams, which I have participated this year's game jam as well. It's called the Game Maker Toolkit's game jam, I think. And GDC is Game Devs Conference, also really good for game design. So if you're interested into lengthier talks, you can watch them as well. And this game was made with Godot. It's I highly recommend everyone who especially is interested in making games or tinkering with them to download the engine. It's completely free and open source. And I'll actually I'll leave the source code for this project for those who want to have a look at it. So there you go. Here's a cool reason if you want to check it out. And you can open the source code project with Godot and see how everything in this game was made. And mega thank you for the music as well. That this track is a bopper. Sauce jam, as they say. And yeah, that's actually the ending of the slideshow. Or interactive slideshow, I don't know. So if anyone has any questions in the chat, feel free to ask them. I can answer them. Since I believe I still have plenty of time to spare. Example of coyote time? Sure. I can actually give you here because the player uses it. So, I'm not sure how many of you know Jungle Kid, but that's a recent treasure hunter game or fun game that came out. I think it was in a different marathon. So coyote time basically refers to additional time after you cannot execute an action. So in Fangames, when you're on the ground, you can press the shift key to jump. But as soon as you leave the ground, you can no longer use the single jump. So what coyote time does is basically after you leave the ground or the wall, there's a small fraction, there's a small timer that runs in the background, and whilst that timer is still running, you can still use the single jump. So right here, you go away from the floor, and you can still single jump, and this gives you this basically eliminates the feeling of, oh, I pressed the jump, why didn't it work? So this helps a lot for that. Except for wall jumping, so if I let go real fast, then I can still wall jump, despite not touching the wall. So that's coyote time. Are there any games creating Godot? As far as I know, no, actually. There's a lot of, there's a couple Godot engines. I know SmartKim made one a while back, and there's some in Delicious Fruit. I haven't used any of those engines for this project, so everything that you see was made from scratch by crunching this week. Literally, I had to crunch this whole thing in under a week, or else I won't be able to stream this during the Fangame Marathon. So yeah, that's all for you guys, honestly. Estimate? Wait, was it more than an hour? I don't know what the time is right now. I don't know. It's up to you, LSS. 22 minutes. Oh man. Well, that gives plenty of free time for the other runners. What can I say? I'm a generous guy. The 1 hour mark was more for, well, a leeway. I really didn't know how long this will take me to showcase. What is my approach for inspiration? That's a good question. Playing a lot of games, honestly. Like, seeing how the other games do it, what they do. What else? I mean, Twitter helps sometimes. The good side of Twitter, of course. When developers showcase their progress. But yeah, it's mostly just playing games and taking the elements that you enjoy playing. What kind of games am I working on right now? Nothing so far. This was like the only thing I was working in the free time, picking boo. And I don't really have any plans to make something right now. But if I do, I'll be sharing progress on Twitter. Actually, no, that's a lie. I am working for Picking Boo's game. I forgot the name. It's called Weatherfell, I believe so. So if you go to Picking Boo's Twitter or search Weatherfell on Twitter, you can see his game. Get back to work. I will. Don't worry. But yeah, that, as far as ongoing projects, that's the only one I have. What about Glitches? That Death Shield patch, even if it's fun for speedruns? So I don't know. That's up to the devs. If the devs prioritize a smoother experience, well, quote unquote smoother experience for the players, then that's up to them, really. Personally, I don't mind leaving some glitches for the game, but if it's like super game breaking or easily achievable, like if it's frequent, then yeah, I'd probably patch it as well. But other than that, if the speedrun audience is big, then yeah, we'll probably leave them to make them usually more fun. How to make the title screen awesome? Honestly, keep it simple. Like, have striking visuals, like your game logo should be clean and recognizable, and don't have too much on screen, basically. Make it as welcoming as possible. It's hard to explain it, really. You get a better idea if you look at other games that are popular. Like, for example, this one was just a nice intro animation and then like slide onto the side, like, and it depends. Like, I think it boils down to experimentation, really. See what feels natural and nice. Any examples of when you might want to break the rules of those? Yeah. So, for example, in slide 3 about controls. Controls is very, very subjective, and the ones I've listed is something that I think are suitable. But if you go to the OR example, you can see that it uses very floaty controls, but there's a reason. So I feel like you should break the rules as long as there's a solid reason for that. Like in OR's example, the floatiness gives you more leeway to do those kind of dashing actions, for example. And it works, like, yeah. But for Fangames, where there's a lot of precision, obviously helps a lot more to remove momentum to give a lot more responsive and fair controls, especially when you're going through, like, literally pixel gaps. So yeah, that's one example of when you want to break rules. How long did it take me to make this game? I haven't recorded how many hours I've spent, but if I had to assume, maybe 24 or 30 hours for this whole project. A lot of the functionality comes from Godot. I cannot emphasize how powerful this engine is. It comes with a learning curve, but once you understand how things work in this, it becomes super intuitive and it saves you a lot of time. Compared to GameMaker, for example, like in GameMaker, I would never imagine doing this in under a week. Never. Because GameMaker doesn't offer any support for UI. Whereas here, the paragraphs are labels. Then there's also support for video playback. And then you can further customize using the tree architecture. It's complicated. I don't want to explain it too much in detail during the stream, but if you're interested about this engine, then yeah, you should check out some tutorials. Good channels will be to watch our GD Quest and Heartbeast. Heartbeast also covers a lot of great GameMaker tutorials, so those two channels will be a good start. Short-term productivity bursts versus long-term not burning out on a project now. How? You mean whether you should do small projects more frequently than long-term? I guess it really depends from person to person and how you're feeling. I feel like it comes down to discipline and feelings, really. So discipline as in try to focus on having no more than one big project, and you're allowed to make another small project by the side to like learn something new or have it as a refresher. That's how I usually work on game dev. So I'll have if I'm working on a big project, that's the only one I'm allowed to work on. And yeah, the source code is released. I can post the link again. Here you go. Here's the GitHub link. So yeah, one big project and then one small project on the side if you want to experiment with something new. And small projects should be no longer than 1 month. And that's something that teaches you to be disciplined and work on one big project, and also allows you the freedom to stretch your wings and make something new. And who knows, maybe that something new is gonna be actually a lot more fun and exciting for you to work on. For example, the tower defense stage I made for Nang 2, that is something that I've made without like any hesitation. Like every day I will just like wake up and then start up GameMaker to work on that. And then there's some other projects that I'm like, I really don't want to work on. So it depends also on the projects, really. What is the best fun game engine? Yourself. You are the best tool when it comes to making games. A game engine is just a set of tools, but you are the holder or the wielder of the tools. So the better you wield the tools, the better you work. And of course, the engine does matter. It's not like, oh, this engine is the best engine. There's no such thing as the best engine out there. It really depends on what kind of game you're working and trying to finding the most suitable engine. That's what I will focus on. So for example, Godot was more suitable for this kind of project because it has a lot more support for UI, and the robust node system makes it really easy to inherit other scenes, and then that shortens the amount of time you spend on game dev. Yosef engine? No, that's an example of a shit engine. They are shit engines, but they're no best engines. I won't necessarily agree with PKTT. Godot has a learning curve, but it also has a lot of tools that do the work for you. Like, for example, I had to write a whopping 0 lines of codes to make the physics engine because everything is already supplied in. And unlike GameMaker, the physics engine in Godot is actually good, and it works as it's supposed to. So all you have to do is basically manipulate the gravity and give the player some velocity. So the curve is big because of how the engine works, but what the engine offers can save you a lot of time on the basics compared to GameMaker. What are the worst engines? I don't know, anything that's old. Honestly, I feel like... Okay, this is a hot topic that I discuss once in a while, but I feel like GameMaker 1.4 has long reached its end of life cycle. Like, it's no longer an engine that you should be focusing on, in my opinion. And actually, good news are that Yo-Yo Games have made GameMaker Studio 2 free, actually, without any restrictions. The only restriction is that you cannot export. But what you can do is instead make the full game and then pay for an annual license, which is like $30, and just export it then. Will I be making more fan games in the future? Not anytime soon. I'm kind of like... I've had enough time on fan games, and Nang 2 definitely took a lot of out of me. So yeah, don't expect any fan games anytime soon from me. But I will be making other games. So yeah, I will be making games, but not fun games. Unless I have like a super cool idea for a fun game, which I do actually. There's one idea that I still want to do for a fun game, but I don't know if I want to do it anytime soon. And it's not gonna be a platform; it's gonna be an avoidance. Do you know any examples of Steam games with Godot? Yes, there are some few Steam games. I don't remember any names on top of my head, but Godot has show reels. If you go to their channel or their website, you can click on the show reels or search for show reels and then showcase like the best projects that the engine has to offer. And there's also going to be another show reel, a brand new one coming out soon, showcasing the stuff that people have been working the last year. Yes, Markin's engine exists. Although I feel like it's a bit complicated. I've used it for game jumps and other stuff. It's up to you. What I would recommend, because most people over here aren't so familiar with Godot, is to try making stuff from scratch at first, so that they understand how everything works, what the workflow is, and what kind of workflow suits you, and then maybe try picking up an engine. Because this is like something, it's a mistake that I regret with Yo-Yo-Yo's engine for GameMaker, where I picked up the engine, I was like lost in it. I didn't know what things were doing, what kind of stuff, how to use the objects and such. So trying to learning the basics first is crucial, I think, when learning a new game engine. And then you can like add a second game engine on top of it to make a fun game, for example. That's the way I would do it. What makes a good physics engine good? Yeah, that's a whole another based on its own. Physics engine ties more into game engine development more than game design development, and that's a whole different topic. What is the most common mistake early game makers make? Scope creep. Like dreaming of a really cool game that they simply cannot accomplish. As much as you can think you can do it, you just can't, unfortunately, and that's a harsh reality. So focus on smaller projects, like really simple projects, even if they aren't appealing for the majority of players out there. As long as you're making small projects, you're learning something new about the game engine. And once you're comfortable about it, start making bigger projects, and that way not only will you be able to more comfortably work on them, but you also have a higher chance of not dropping them, because a lot of people make big projects and then they just like to dump them in the trash bin, and then make another one and then dump it again and again and again. It's a vicious cycle, and you don't want to have that. So yeah, make smaller, participate in game jams. That helps a lot, because there's a deadline you have to meet, and that forces you to make more stuff. Do I need to make an engaging stream out of game design as well? Up to you. If you feel you're comfortable in this area and you can explain well, then yeah, why not? Fun game jam one? Not sure. That's up to the community to decide. Let's see, any other questions? Delatrune asks whether Godot can be used for making fan games. Absolutely. The only exception is Precise Needle, because the engine doesn't have like it's optimized in a way so you get more performance, but in return the it's not pixel perfect. That's the thing about this engine. So you'll often get lines that are float values. Instead of like having 0, 1, or 2, you're gonna have like 0.2 or 1.56, something like that. So forget about Precise Needle, but everything else, yes, you can absolutely make fan games with this, and it's a great tool for that. It's more than capable for making 2D games. 3D, yes, but with some caveats. What was the hardest part about Dang 2? Oh boy, where did I begin with that? Realizing that this project is gonna eat half a year out of my life. That was the hardest thing to get by. But no, jokes aside, the final stage. It was really fun though, but I think the final stage definitely took a lot of effort to produce it. But I think it achieved legendary status, which is what I was aiming for. Yeah. And I still regret that the final stage came out really difficult at first. Again, this goes really okay. Where is that slideshow? Like one of the topics I was covering was inspired by that final stage. Was it game pace? No, I think it was. I think it was communication actually. Oh boy, we're playing Find the Right slideshow. Yeah, there we go. This first paragraph. Viewing it from a new player's perspective. And this is something I forgot for the final stage when I was making it. I was so engaged with it. I was having so much fun with it. That at the end, I forgot to not only test it, like the only tester I had was Peace before the game released. And he only tested like the first stage. So yeah, this is very important and crucial. Whenever you're making a game, and this is something I didn't cover. Whenever you're making a game, what you're making is gonna be twice or 3 times as hard for the player. Know that. As much as you think, no, this is easy, trust me, the player is gonna struggle a lot more than you do. Because you're the game developer and you know every nook and cranny of it. When you're making something, make sure to test it and then lower your expectations. If you think something is easy, trust me, it's not gonna be as easy as you think. Player are idiots. Yeah, how can you trust those silly pawns? Why does that happen though? Because you're a game developer, and as a responsible game developer, you test your stuff over and over and over. But the player isn't gonna do that. He's gonna play the level once and move on. And so, considering that he only played once and you played it countless of times and you know everything how the game works, obviously you're gonna have an easier time. So yeah, that's the reason why. Also good point, analysis. That's true. And something I didn't cover in this this showcase is player feedback. And one small caveat about that is you don't have to listen to every single feedback, and especially don't take too hard what the testers or players say, because most of the time, well, sometimes, not most of the time, depends on how good the tester is, but players, for example, who have no testing experience will often say, oh, this ability is overpowered. But in reality, maybe it's like a different ability that's buffing that ability that's making it overpowered. Like, there's usually other reasons to the problem, and finding the root cause of that is up to the developers, not the player. The developer is gonna tell you the problem, but that problem isn't necessarily the root cause of it. So that's another very important thing to remember when making games and listening to feedback. And also, Game Maker's Toolkit on YouTube has a brilliant video about that. So if you're interested more about that topic, you should check it out. It's called player feedback something. I mean, yeah, most of the time you want negative feedback rather than good stuff. Feedback is there to improve your product, not to praise it. Yeah, exactly. Constructive criticism. That's the phrase. And also another solid advice for those who are testers or have tested games before. Always be honest with the developer. Like, even if the feedback might seem harsh, it's better than just like sugarcoating it. Like, if you see something that's not right, or you're not having fun, be honest and just tell him as it is. Because you're not gonna hurt his feelings. Well, at least I hope he doesn't take it too hard. Because developers crave for that kind of feedback. Like, we want to know what's wrong with the game, even if it hurts listening to, because that is what drives us to improve. Like, I didn't start off making this kind of quality games at the beginning. Like, it took me years and years of iterating everything all over until I started understanding like everything altogether. Like, the first fun game that I've made, oh god, it was a generic nil game with a super high scrolling background with stars and stuff. And it had like the most elementary gimmicks back then. And then after that I made Equivision, and that's for some reason the most popular game I've made on Delphoid, and I hate it. I hate how my simplest game is like the most popular. And I've made that thing in 3 days. I guess, hold on. Who's interested in here to, if I can showcase the project in Godot? Like, who's interested to watch that? Just to see how, the inner workings of this beast. Alright, we got a few people. Let me switch to Godot. Alright. That should be working. I should probably let that on for music. I'll put it back up. Okay, so let me show you the main level, how that looks like. So you have a couple things. Let me lower the music a bit, so I'm having a hard time to concentrate on this. Alright, so the way that Godot works, it has different types of nodes. So when you go and add a new node, you have, usually there's like 3 base nodes, and then there's like some miscellaneous ones. It starts from node to D for 2-dimensional games, which is what you mostly use, and control nodes for UI. So for this level, I've used this kind of like tile map node. So if you want to make a tile set, or like put a tile set in a level, you just make a tile map node. This is what it's called. And this allows you to draw with a tile set. And the thing is, this is also a smart tile set. So if I start making stuff, it automatically tiles for you, like in a Wannamaker. And you can like make multiple, or like in a line, and then also right click to remove. So it's essentially like a Wannamaker. And there's gonna be a lot more functionality coming with tile sets or tile maps in the future, with 4.9 coming out. It's gonna be insane. Right now they're a little bit intuitive, but with a few tutorials, you can get by them, and you can have multiple tiles. Like you can have single tile maps like this one, so you can just choose and put stuff over here. That's really handy. And then you have the player node. And the thing about this is like the player scene itself is like a whole nother tree. Like the player is like it's like if you've used GameMaker before, everything is a room. Like, and you can nest rooms into each other. It's kind of like that. Like a room can have like this, and that, and then you can take that, group it up, and it's called a scene. And then you put that scene onto a different scene, and you nest it there, and you can make crazy stuff with that. And it's very helpful and flexible. Nodes are like objects. Nodes are, I'd consider them. Oh wow, that's hard. The example that the manual gives is nodes are ingredients, and scenes are the dishes. So if this dish needs this and this and this ingredients, you take those nodes, you mix them up, you put a script to make it alive or code something, and you pack it up into a scene, and that's the dish. So if your game needs this kind of dish, you make it, and then at the end of the day, you have like a table with multiple dishes, and that table is your game. This is how I'll explain nodes. And the thing is that there's like another really cool thing about it. So let's see. Oh, I wonder if it's gonna record the window if I launch it. Okay, the thing about Godot is like you can launch a separate scene on its own. Like in, for example, in GameMaker, when you want to test something, you have to compile the whole thing. Whereas in Godot, you can just compile that specific scene to save on a lot of time. But I don't have. Well, I guess I have this one. Or hold on, let's do test environment. Yeah. So this is what I was using to test the character. You press F6. Let's see if it's recording. No, it's not recording that. But yeah, basically, you can just play that scene. And the blocks are invisible because they're just like collision masks. They're not supposed to be visible. You can turn them on. You can have them visible though. Let me change that. There's like a setting here in the editor. Also, it's not showing the whole thing. Just noticed that. Oh wow, yeah. Sorry about that. Hit the screen. There we go. Yeah, I wasn't even showing the whole editor. Wait, was I recording the game in a scaled up resolution? I hope not. I don't think it was. I'd be very upset if I was. Yeah, I'm just setting up something so you can see both the game and the engine. We got plenty of time to spare, right? We'll be fine. Okay. There we go. So that's gonna be the game. So in the editor, there's There's debug and invisible collision shapes, and that allows you to see everything that's invisible to the naked eye. So yeah, you can just test this, see if it works, and you don't have to compile the whole thing. It's really cool. And check this out. You can't see that here, but I move this over here. There's a remote panel. This is like the coolest thing ever. Actually, there's a better example I can do. I don't think this demonstrates how cool this is. Let me run the full game. Okay, so this is in debug mode. Hopefully it's recording it. Yep. Alright. This is like this is giving you a more in-depth of where everything happens. So for example, this warp for the slideshow has 2 collision boxes. There's one for when the player goes in to expand it and one to shrink it when you're outside of it. And you use signals to do that. And for switching colors, you have those 2 triggers. So if we go to game pace over here, this is the cool part. So, for example, this is something I was doing with Null when he was proofreading. If you see something that's wrong, you don't have to close the game. You can just like go to the inspector on the right and go. So this is scene 2, slide 1 over here, and there's this text right here that you can put. And you can literally just put anything you want, save it, and then they should update in the game whilst the game is running. So you can have live editing. And this is something that Nogart is using when making avoidances for GameMaker Studio 2, but this just comes in with the engine. And yeah, you could just like remove that, save it, and there you go. Game has been updated again. Yep. I don't know what else I can show. Is there anything specific you guys want to see? Like maybe how some of the animations work? Or do we even have enough time for that? I don't know what the time is.
Hi, Alex.
Hey, Wolsk. How are we doing on time?
We're at 57.5 minutes, so
yeah,
may as well hop on over unless you have something like really quick. Because
nah, I'm actually struggling to find something to show.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, then that will do it. This engine looks wild.
Sure does. World record.
Look, I don't even have anything to say.
Yeah, everyone's speechless. I think that just shows that this was a mission accomplished.
Yeah, you said everything you needed to, and you got the information out, which really that's the goal.
It really is what we want to do. Yep.
Well, thank you for the showcase, Alex. Always cool to see your game design showcases. Hopefully another in the future.
Yeah, hopefully. As long as people feel inspired and they want to try and tinkering a little bit, then yeah, that's really endearing for me, and really why I'm doing this in the first place, to inspire people and hopefully see better games in the future, you know?
Yeah, for sure. All right, we're going to transition it over, and up next will be Near with Deluxatine, and I'm going to be the guy Fangame. Have a good one, Alex.